about to hear spine-tingling tales of the paranormal, bizarre coincidence, and unexplained phenomena. This is Strange Podcast. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and at strangepodcast.com.
This is episode 11. I'm Chris Batchelor. Thank you for listening. If you'd like your Christmas specials to include a celebrity disappearance, spontaneous human combustion, and a bizarre seasonal UFO, then you've come to the right place. This is Strange Podcast Christmas Special 2016. And this time, we take a look at some of history's most unusual happenings during the festive season. So sit back with your favourite Christmas drink and raise a glass to a very strange Christmas.
You can support Strange Podcast by clicking on the donate page at strangepodcast.com.
Well, once again, a very warm welcome to episode 11 of Strange Podcast. This is our Christmas special for 2016. And a big hello and thank you to everybody who's subscribed on iTunes over recent weeks. And for everybody who's found us on Facebook and Twitter. It's great to connect with you guys too. So thank you very much for finding us. As you know, we're always looking for your support and donations to help with the running costs of the podcast. Now, we're not trying to get rich by doing this, but to have the podcast pay for itself is eventually the idea. And speaking of ideas, I've had a bit of a brainwave, which we're launching now as of this episode. For everybody who does make a donation to the show, we're going to be sending you not just a thank you letter from me, but also one of our limited edition, special, Nobody Knows I'm Strange button pin badges. Now these, you can't get them anywhere else. We've had them designed ourselves. They are limited edition. There's been a very small print run of them. So if you fancy grabbing one of those, we're going to give them away to everybody who makes a donation. There's two ways to donate. You can donate as a one-off or monthly, and you can find out full information about that and how you can get your button pin badge and see what it looks like too at strangepodcast.com and click on the donate page. You'll see all the details there.
Have you witnessed an apparition, seen a UFO, or even Bigfoot? Whatever your strange story, we want to hear from you. Your story could be featured in a future episode. Go to strangepodcast.com for more.
On the 3rd of December, 1926, English crime novelist Agatha Christie got up from her armchair, climbed the stairs of her Berkshire home. She kissed her sleeping daughter Rosalind, aged 7, good night, and made her way back downstairs again. She then climbed into her Morris Cowley and drove off into the night. She would not be seen again for 11 days. Agatha Christie, one of the world's most famous authors, only outsold by the Bible and Shakespeare, had disappeared. This strange happening sparked a manhunt, the size of which had never been seen before. Fellow famous author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a keen occultist, tried using paranormal powers to solve the mystery. He took one of Christie's gloves to a celebrated medium in the hope that it would provide some answers. It did not. Still to this day, the reasons for her disappearance and what she did for those 11 days remains a mystery. Agatha Christie herself claimed total memory loss and was eventually found safe at a hotel in Harrogate using an assumed name of Teresa Neal. There's been much speculation as to her reasons for disappearing. Some claim it was a publicity stunt. Others believe she had some sort of psychological episode. It's also been suggested that her disappearance was an attempt to have her adulterous husband arrested, faking her own murder. It's also claimed that the name of her husband's mistress was Teresa Neal. A farmhand named John Larson spent Christmas 1885 with his employers Patrick and Matilda Rooney, an elderly couple who lived just outside Seneca, Illinois. They shared several drinks before Larson retired for the evening and went upstairs to bed. Sometime during the night, he underwent a coughing fit and had trouble breathing, but soon drifted back to sleep. When Larson woke up on Christmas morning, traces of soot were on his pillow. Larson went downstairs and was shocked to find Patrick dead in his bedroom. Matilda was nowhere to be found. Later that day, Larson wandered into the kitchen and found a large blackened hole in the floor. It rested alongside what appeared to be the charred remains of a human foot. A pile of ash was inside the hole. This was all that was left of Matilda Rooney. It seemed that Matilda was the victim of spontaneous human combustion, which caused her entire body to catch fire and to burn to ashes. The estimated temperature of the fire that consumed her was 1,400 degrees Celsius, or 2,500 Fahrenheit. But there were no signs of fire damage, other than that spot. It was later determined that Patrick had died of smoke inhalation. This explained Larson's coughing fit during the night. He was spared death because he slept behind a closed door on the second floor. Even though there was speculation that Larson could have murdered both of them, it seemed impossible for him to have started such a blazing fire without damaging the rest of the house. It's claimed it's possible that excessive alcohol consumption caused Matilda Rooney to spontaneously combust. A prominent local legend was that she suffered divine retribution for daring to drink so much on Christmas Eve. It's a very sad occurrence when a person is found dead and no one knows their true identity. If the victim cannot be identified, he or she is called a John or a Jane Doe. This situation occurs many times a year, but in 1996, one particular Jane Doe made a concerted effort to ensure her identity remained a mystery. On December the 18th, a woman was found lying dead on top of a plastic sheet in Annandale, Virginia, at the Pleasant Valley Memorial Park Cemetery. She was approximately 60 years old and carried no identification. Brandy and Valium were also found in her system. A plastic bag was taped over her head. She had asphyxiated. It seems she did not want anyone to know her true identity, as she had a note which read, "Deceased by own hand, prefer no autopsy." It was signed Jane Doe. Jane Doe also requested to be cremated and left behind two $50 bills to cover the expense. The scene contained many strange clues about this mysterious woman's background. She had set up a miniature Christmas tree beside her and decorated it. She also had a portable tape player and comedy tapes in her possession. She died with headphones on, listening to the famous 2,000-Year-Old Man comedy routine by Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. The most intriguing aspect of Jane Doe's suicide was that she was found in the section of the cemetery for deceased infants. Sadly, no one has ever come forward to identify Jane Doe, and her motivation still remains a mystery. One of the UK's first UFO hotspots was a small town named Warminster. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Warminster was a haven for UFO sightings. However, the sightings were not initially flying objects, but unexplained sounds. On Christmas morning in 1964, many Warminster residents were disturbed by a series of strange noises, which consisted of a strong pounding vibration and could be best described as a sonic attack. One resident was awoken by the repeated sound of something falling onto her roof. When she looked out the window, she heard a strange humming noise, but the weather was clear and nothing had come into contact with her roof. This same experience was reported by many different residents in different locations that morning, including 30 soldiers at a nearby base camp. However, no one saw anything strange, nor could they figure out where these sounds originated. The most unusual incident involved a resident named Marjorie Bye. While walking to church for a Christmas service, Bye was so overwhelmed by vibrating noises that she was knocked to the ground and rendered unable to move. In her own words, she was pinned down by invisible fingers of sound. Over the course of the next year, there were numerous reported incidents of strange unexplained sounds in Warminster. These noises were eventually nicknamed The Thing. By summer 1965, witnesses started reporting unidentified flying objects in the sky. Warminster garnered a ton of publicity after a photograph of a flying saucer was published in the newspapers. UFO enthusiasts started flocking to the town, but the hype eventually died down and there would be no more visits from the Warminster Thing. Even so, no one has ever been able to explain the origin of the strange sounds heard on Christmas Day, 1964. Virtually everyone who celebrates Christmas is familiar with the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, or, as it's otherwise known, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. Believe it or not, the origin of this poem is shrouded in mystery. For many years, no one knew who wrote it. A Visit from St. Nicholas was sent anonymously to the Sentinel newspaper in New York and first published on December the 23rd, 1823. The poem proved enormously popular, but the author's identity was unknown. Finally, in 1844, a professor named Clement Clark Moore claimed credit for writing the poem, which had been sent to the Sentinel by one of his friends. The story goes that Moore was hesitant to take credit for the poem because he was embarrassed by it and considered it to be unscholarly. However, some historians don't believe Moore was actually the author at all. A professor named Donald Wayne Foster presented compelling evidence in 2000 that the real author of A Visit from St. Nicholas was actually Henry Livingstone Jr., who died in 1828. Foster believed the poem bore a striking resemblance to Livingstone's other writings, but was a strange anomaly in Moore's body of work. Some called Moore a sour, unsentimental individual and asserted that A Visit from St. Nicholas didn't fit his persona, but other historians disagree. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence in favour of Livingstone is the names of Santa's last two reindeer in the poem. They were originally Dunder and Blixen, and only became Donder and Blitzen because of a printer's error. Many years later, Moore wrote out copies of his poem, but committed the same mistake by writing Donder and Blitzen. The words Dunder and Blixen are actually Dutch for thunder and lightning. Moore spoke no Dutch, but Livingstone did. Still, after 2 centuries, the debate rages on about who really wrote "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
Merry Christmas from Strange Podcast. We'll be back in the new year with more strange tales of the paranormal, bizarre coincidence, and unexplained phenomena.